The morning air on Kepler 442b was cold and sharp. Staff Sergeant Danny Rodriguez pulled his jacket closer as he led his patrol through the crystal forest. The trees around them looked like giant glass spears reaching toward the purple sky. Each step made a soft crunch on the frozen ground. Rodriguez had been on this planet for 6 months now. The war against the Vorthek Empire had brought him to many strange worlds, but this one was different. The crystals made everything echo. Every sound bounced back and forth between the trees. It made Rodriguez nervous. Sound could give away there. Positioned to enemy scouts. Behind him walked 4 other soldiers. Corporal Lisa Hayes carried the heavy demo pack on her back. She was small but tough, and she knew more about explosives than anyone Rodriguez had ever met. Private First Class Tony Chun kept checking his radio equipment. The crystals made communication difficult, and Ching worked hard to keep their link to base strong. Private Marcus Johnson moved quietly through the trees. He was their medic, but he had sharp eyes for spotting danger. Private Kate Sullivan brought up the rear with her sniper rifle. She could hit targets that other soldiers could not even see. They had been walking for 2 hours when Chun raised his hand. The patrol stopped. Chun pressed his earpiece and frowned. He looked at Rodriguez and shook his head. Something was wrong. With the radio, Rodriguez pulled out his field glasses and scanned the area ahead. Through the crystal trees he could see their base in the distance. Forward Operating Base Charlie sat in a valley between 2 ridges. It looked peaceful from here. Smoke rose from the mess hall chimney. Guards walked their normal routes on the walls, but something felt wrong. Rodriguez had learned to trust his gut during 10 years in the army. Right now his gut was telling him to be careful. Chun finally got his radio working. The static cleared and a voice came through. It was Lieutenant Amy Walsh from Base Intelligence. Patrol 7, this is Base. Return immediately. We have a code red situation developing. Rodriguez keyed his radio. Base, this is Rodriguez. What kind of code red? Long-range sensors picked up something big heading our way? Really big. Colonel Morrison wants all patrols back now. Rodriguez looked at his team. Hayes was checking her demo charges. Johnson was scanning the trees with his rifle ready. Sullivan had found a good spot behind a crystal tree and was watching their back trail. Chun was trying to boost the radio signal. How big is big? Rodriguez asked. There was a long pause. When Walsh spoke again, her voice was tight with worry. It's a crusher, Danny. The Vorthak sent a crusher. Rodriguez felt his blood turn cold. Everyone in the Terran Defense Force knew about crushers. They were the Vorthak Empire's worst weapon. Biomechanical monsters that stood as tall as buildings. They could destroy entire regiments in minutes. 3 human bases had already fallen to crushers on other worlds. How long do we have? Rodriguez asked. Unknown. It's moving faster than our models predicted. All evacuation ships are being prepped now. You need to get back here fast. Rodriguez looked at the distance to base. It was at least 3 miles through. Difficult terrain. The crystal trees grew thick in some areas, making travel slow. But they had to try. Copy that, Base. We're moving now. He signaled to his team. They began moving quickly through the forest. Hayes took point, using her knowledge of explosives to spot any Vorthak mines or traps. Chun worked to keep their radio link strong as they moved. Johnson and Sullivan watched for enemy scouts. They had covered about half the distance when the ground began to shake. At first, Rodriguez thought it might be an earthquake, but the shaking had a rhythm to it. Like giant footsteps, Sullivan grabbed Rodriguez's arm and pointed up at the ridge ahead of them. Something huge was moving behind the crystal trees on the ridgeline. The trees were swaying and falling as something massive pushed through them. Chun's radio crackled to life. This time it was Colonel Morrison himself. His voice was calm but urgent. All units, this is Base Command. Begin immediate evacuation. The crusher is 2 miles out and closing fast. All non-essential personnel to the ships. Now, Rodriguez could see the evacuation in the distance. Small figures were running between buildings at the base. Ships were warming up their engines. Smoke and steam rose from various points as equipment was being destroyed to keep it from enemy hands. The shaking got stronger. Through his field glasses, Rodriguez could now see the top of something moving along the ridge. It was dark and covered in what looked like armor plating. Even from this distance, it was clearly enormous. Hayes was breathing hard from the fast pace. "Sarge, at this rate we're not going to make it to the ships in time." Rodriguez knew she was right. The evacuation ships could not wait forever. If they stayed too long, the Crusher would destroy them along with everything else. "Keep moving," he told his team. "We'll figure something out." But even as he said it, Rodriguez was starting to understand the truth. They were probably not going to make it to the ships. The Crusher was moving too fast, and they were too far away. The ridge ahead of them exploded in a shower of crystal and dirt. Something massive broke through the tree line. Rodriguez got his first clear look at the thing that was about to destroy everything he cared about. The Crusher stood nearly 200 feet tall. Its body was a horrible mix of living tissue and metal machinery. Thick armor plates covered most of its form, but Rodriguez could see places where flesh showed through gaps in the metal. Multiple eyes dotted its head, each one the size of a car window. Weapon ports opened and closed along its arms like mechanical mouths. The creature's legs were as thick as tree trunks, each step leaving deep craters in the ground. Steam rose from vents along its back. Its head turned slowly as it scanned the valley below, looking for targets. Rodriguez and his team froze behind a cluster of crystal trees. They were close enough now to hear the Crusher's breathing. It sounded like a massive engine running at idle. Metal creaked and groaned as the creature shifted its weight. Chun's radio crackled one more time. Colonel Morrison's voice was barely audible through the static. "Last ship lifting off now. Anyone still on the ground? You're on your own." "Good luck." Rodriguez watched the final evacuation ship rise into the purple sky. It moved quickly, trying to get away before the Crusher could target it. The massive creature's head tracked the ship's movement, but it did not fire. Perhaps it was saving its weapons for bigger targets. The ship disappeared into the clouds, leaving Rodriguez and his team alone on the surface with the most dangerous weapon the Vorthic Empire had ever built. The Crusher began moving down into the valley toward the now empty base. Each step shook the ground like a small earthquake. Rodriguez realized that he and his 4 soldiers were the only humans left on the planet. They were also the only thing standing between this monster and the evacuation ships that were still within the creature's range. Rodriguez made a decision. That would change everything. Instead of running away from the Crusher, he was going to figure out how to stop it. Rodriguez led his team deeper into the crystal forest. They needed to find a place where they could watch the Crusher without being seen. The creature was now in the valley, moving toward the abandoned base with slow, careful steps. "There," Sullivan pointed to an overhang of crystal formations about 500 yards from the base. "We can see everything from up there, and the crystals will hide our heat signatures." The team climbed carefully up the rocky slope. The crystal overhang created a natural cave that gave them a perfect view of the valley below. Rodriguez pulled out his field glasses and studied the massive creature. The Crusher had stopped at the edge of the base. Its multiple eyes were scanning the buildings, looking for signs of life. When it found none, it began a systematic destruction of everything humans had built there. "Look at how it moves," Johnson said quietly. "It's not just smashing things randomly. It's being smart about it," Rodriguez nodded. The creature was targeting specific buildings first. The communications array went down with one blast from its arm-mounted plasma cannon. Then it destroyed the vehicle depot, the ammunition storage, and the command center. Each target was chosen for maximum strategic value. "It's like watching a demolition expert at work," Hayes said. "Except the expert is 200 feet tall and has guns for arms." Jin was working with his radio equipment, trying to tap into any systems that might still be working at the base. After several minutes, he got lucky. "I'm picking up signals from the base's sensor network. Most of it is destroyed, but some of the underground sensors are still working." "Can you access the data?" Rodriguez asked. Chun nodded and began working with his portable computer. Numbers and readings scrolled across the small screen. After a few minutes, he looked up with interest. This is strange. The creature's energy signature is not constant. It goes up and down in a regular pattern, like it's cycling power every few minutes. Rodriguez thought about this. How often? Looks like every 4 minutes and 20 seconds. The power drops for about 30 seconds, then comes back up. Hayes leaned over to look at the data. That suggests it has some kind of power management system, maybe to prevent overheating. Rodriguez continued watching the crusher through his field glasses. Something else was bothering him about the way it moved. The creature had a slight limp. It favored its left side, putting more weight on its right leg with each step. Sullivan, look at its rear left leg. Do you see anything unusual? Sullivan raised her rifle scope and studied the creature carefully. After a long moment, she lowered the rifle with a surprised expression. There are scorch marks on the armor. Plating, old ones. And some of the armor panels don't line up right, like they were repaired but not perfectly. Johnson, with his medical training, was also watching the creature's movement. It's compensating for chronic pain. Look at how it shifts weight before each step. That's not normal movement for something that size, Rodriguez began to understand. This particular crusher had been in battles before. It had been damaged and repaired, but the repairs were not perfect. The creature was working around its old injuries. Chun, keep monitoring that power cycle. Hayes, I need you to think about structural weak points. Johnson, watch how it moves and tell me everything you notice about its physical condition. Sullivan, keep those scorch marks in sight. The team settled in to study their enemy. For the next hour, they watched as the crusher methodically destroyed every building in the base. But they were not just watching destruction. They were learning. Rodriguez had worked in construction before joining the army. He knew about load-bearing structures and stress points. As he watched the massive creature, he began to see it not as an unstoppable monster, but as a very large, very complex machine with specific engineering requirements. The power cycling makes sense now, Hayes said after watching for a while. Look at the size of that thing. The power requirements must be enormous. It probably runs hot and needs cooling breaks. And the old injury explains the movement pattern. Johnson added, it's developed compensatory behaviors. Its gait is predictable because it has to protect that damaged leg. Chun looked up from his computer. I'm getting more data from the underground sensors. The creature's mass distribution is not even. It's heavier on the right side, probably because of additional armor or mechanical systems added during repairs. Sullivan was still watching through her scope. The scorch marks are definitely from energy weapons. Probably our own plasma cannons. Someone hurt this thing before, but not enough to stop it. Rodriguez pulled out a piece of paper and began sketching what they had learned. The crusher's power system, its movement patterns, its old injuries, and its structural requirements. Slowly, a picture began to form. The creature finished destroying the base and began scanning the sky. Its head turned upward, and several antenna-like structures extended from its skull. It was looking for the evacuation ships. It's tracking them, Chun said, reading his instruments. The ships are still in orbit, but this thing has a long-range targeting system. If it gets a lock on them, ... quote, Rodriguez understood. The crusher could reach the ships even in orbit. The evacuation had not taken the human forces out of danger. It had just moved them to a different kind of danger. The creature's main weapon systems began to activate. Ports opened along its arms and back, revealing massive energy cannons. The air around the crusher began to shimmer with heat as the weapons charged up. How long until it can fire? Rodriguez asked. Chun checked his readings. Based on the power build-up, maybe 10 minutes. Maybe less. Rodriguez looked at his small team. 5 soldiers with basic equipment against a weapon that had destroyed entire regiments? The smart thing to do would be to hide and hope the creature missed the ships. But Rodriguez knew it would not miss. The Vorthek did not build weapons that missed. I have an idea, he said. It's crazy, but it might work. Hayes looked at him with concern. How crazy are we talking about, Sarge? Rodriguez pointed at his sketch. Look at this thing. It's big, it's powerful, but it's also a machine. And machines have weak points? We just have to find them. You want to attack that thing? Sullivan asked. With what? Our rifles aren't going to scratch something that big. Not our rifles, Rodriguez said. But Hayes's demo charges might, if we can get them to the right places. He pointed to his sketch again. This creature is a hybrid of biological and mechanical parts. The two systems have to interface somewhere. Those interface points are probably the weakest spots in its armor. Johnson studied the sketch. You're talking about getting close to that thing, very close. Close enough to plant charges at specific points, Rodriguez confirmed. If we can disrupt the connection between its biological and mechanical systems, we might be able to bring it down. Chun looked at his power readings again. The power cycling could help us. When its power drops, some of its defensive systems might go offline. Hayes was already checking her demolition equipment. I have enough charges for maybe 6 good explosions, but they would have to be placed exactly right. Rodriguez looked out at the crusher. It was still charging its weapons, preparing to destroy. The ships carrying hundreds of human soldiers and civilians. The creature that was built to crush regiments was about to prove why it had earned that reputation. But Rodriguez had spent his whole life figuring out how to build things and how to tear them down. This was just a bigger project than usual. We're going to do this, he told his team. We're going to take down that monster. The crusher's weapons were almost fully charged. Time was running out for everyone in orbit. But down in the crystal cave, 5 human soldiers were planning to do the impossible. The sky above Kepler 442 be suddenly filled with streaks of light. A meteor shower was beginning, just as the planet's computer models had predicted. Rodriguez watched the burning rocks fall through the atmosphere and realized they had been given a gift. The meteors will mask our heat signatures, he told his team. The crusher's sensors won't be able to tell the difference between us and falling rocks. Hayes was already preparing her demolition charges. She had 6 explosive packs, each one carefully designed to create maximum damage in a small area. But looking at the massive creature below, even she seemed worried about whether they would be enough. Where exactly do you want these placed? She asked Rodriguez. Rodriguez pointed to his sketch of the crusher. Here, where the biological tissue meets the mechanical joint on the rear left leg. Here, at the base of the neck where the armor plating has gaps. And here, where the weapon systems connect to the main body. That's only 3 locations, Hayes said. I have 6 charges. We might not get to all 6 locations, Rodriguez admitted. But if we can hit those 3 spots, we might disrupt enough systems to bring it down. Sullivan was studying the crusher through her rifle scope. The automated defense systems are the biggest problem. I count at least 20 small gun turrets. Along its body, they track movement independently. Johnson pointed to something he had noticed. Look at the pattern of the gun turrets. They're designed to cover approaches from ground level and from the air. But there are blind spots. Chun looked up from his computer. The meteor shower is getting heavier. If we move now, we'll have maximum cover. Rodriguez made his decision. Hayes and I will approach the rear leg. Johnson, you come with us to watch for defensive systems. Sullivan, find a position where you can cover us. Chun, stay here and monitor communications. If the orbital fleet tries to contact us, let them know what we're doing. The team began to move. The meteor shower was creating a light show in the sky above them, and each falling rock added to the sensor confusion around the crusher. The massive creature was still focused on charging its main weapons. Preparing to fire on the ships in orbit, Rodriguez led Hayes and Johnson down from their crystal cave hiding spot. They moved carefully from rock to rock, using the natural terrain to stay hidden. The crusher's feet were constantly shifting as it maintained balance, and each step created small earthquakes that made movement dangerous. The first challenge came when they reached the edge of the creature's defensive perimeter, small gun turrets. Along the crusher's lower body began tracking in their direction. The automated systems could not get a clear lock because of the meteor shower, but they were clearly detecting something. Johnson spotted the solution. The power cycling, he whispered. When the main power drops, those gun turrets slow down. We have a 30-second window every 4 minutes. Rodriguez checked his watch. Next power drop in 2 minutes. Get ready to move fast. They waited behind a large boulder, watching the gun turrets sweep back and forth. The meteors continued to fall, creating flashes of light and heat that confused the Crusher's sensors. Rodriguez could see the massive creature's main weapons were almost fully charged. Time was running out. Now, Johnson whispered. The gun turrets suddenly slowed their movement as the Crusher's power cycled down. Rodriguez and his team sprinted across open ground toward the creature's rear left leg. The leg was as wide as a building and covered in thick armor plating, but Rodriguez could see the gaps where biological tissue showed through. Hayes immediately began placing her first charge at the junction point Rodriguez had identified. The explosive pack was small, but it was designed to create focused damage rather than a big explosion. If placed correctly, it could sever connections between systems. The power cycle ended, and the gun turrets resumed their normal speed. But Rodriguez's team was now in a blind spot created by the creature's own leg. They were hidden from most of the defensive systems. First charge is set, Hayes whispered. Remote detonator ready. Rodriguez looked up at the massive creature towering above them. Being this close to something so large was terrifying. The Crusher's breathing sounded like a factory running at full power. Heat radiated from its body, making the air around them shimmer. Next target is the neck junction, Rodriguez said. That's going to be harder to reach. They began moving around the creature's body, staying close to the legs where the blind spots were largest. Johnson kept watch for defensive systems while Hayes prepared her second charge. The neck junction was 20 feet above ground level, at a point where the creature's head connected to its main body. Rodriguez could see gaps in the armor plating where thick cables and biological tissue connected the two sections. I need a boost, Hayes said. Looking up at the target, Rodriguez and Johnson formed a human ladder, allowing Hayes to climb up toward the junction point. She moved quickly, knowing that their position was more exposed here. If the Crusher's defensive systems detected them now, they would have nowhere to hide. Hayes reached the junction and began placing her second charge. The work was delicate because she had to find exactly the right spot where the explosive would do maximum damage to both biological and mechanical systems. Above them, the Crusher's main weapons were reaching full charge. Energy crackled between the massive cannon ports as the creature prepared to fire on the orbital fleet. Rodriguez could hear a high-pitched whining sound as the weapons built toward firing readiness. Charge 2 is set, Hayes called down quietly, but as she began to climb down, one of the gun turrets finally got a clear sensor reading. The automated system locked onto Hayes and began swiveling toward her position. Johnson saw the danger first. Gun turret, 2 o'clock, it's got a lock. Sullivan's voice crackled over their radio from her sniper position. I see it. Taking the shot. Her rifle fired once and the gun turret exploded in a shower of sparks. But the explosion had drawn attention from other defensive systems. More turrets were beginning to track toward their position. We need to move, Rodriguez said. Now, the team sprinted away from the neck area, looking for cover. The Crusher's defensive systems were fully active now, and gun turrets were firing in all directions, trying to locate the intruders. Rodriguez's radio crackled with Chun's voice. Sarge, I'm picking up communications from the orbital fleet. Admiral, Stone is requesting status. She's preparing to begin bombardment runs. Rodriguez keyed his radio while dodging gunfire from the automated turrets. Tell her to hold off. We're not finished yet. She says they can't wait much longer, Chun replied. The Crusher's main weapons are almost ready to fire. Rodriguez looked up at the massive creature. The main weapon ports were glowing bright white with energy buildup. In minutes, maybe less, the Crusher would fire on the ships above. Hundreds of human lives depended on what happened in the next few minutes. Hayes had 2 charges placed, but Rodriguez knew they needed more to guarantee success. The creature was simply too large and too well armored to be stopped by just 2 explosions. Third target, he told his team. The weapon system junction on the right arm. But reaching the right arm meant crossing open ground where multiple gun turrets could target them. The meteor shower was beginning to thin out, reducing their sensor cover. And the power cycling system meant they would only have one more 30-second window before the Crusher finished charging its weapons. Johnson was studying the defensive system patterns. "There's a path," he said. "It's risky, but if we time it right with the next power cycle, we might make it." Rodriguez checked his watch, 1 minute until the next power drop. After that, they would be out of time. The Crusher would fire on the orbital fleet, and their mission would fail. "Get ready," he told his team. "This is our last chance." The massive creature above them continued charging its weapons. The whining sound was getting louder, and energy discharges were beginning to arc between the weapon ports. Rodriguez realized they were not just running out of time. They were running out of hope, but he had never given up on anything in his life, and he was not going to start now. The Crusher might be built to destroy regiments, but Rodriguez was built to solve problems. And right now, this monster was just another problem that needed solving? Rodriguez and his team waited for the power cycle, crouched behind debris from the destroyed base. The Crusher's main weapons were nearly at full charge, and energy was beginning to arc between the massive cannon ports. Time was almost up. 30 seconds, Rodriguez said, watching his timer. "When the power drops, we make our run for the right arm weapon junction." But as they prepared to move, Johnson grabbed Rodriguez's shoulder. "Wait, look at the chest area." Rodriguez followed Johnson's gaze upward. Between the creature's massive armor plates, he could see something pulsing with a red glow. It was large, maybe the size of a car, and it beat with a steady rhythm. "That's its heart?" Johnson said with medical certainty. "Or at least the biological part of its power system. Look how the armor plates move when it beats." Rodriguez watched. Carefully, Johnson was right. The thick armor plates protecting the creature's chest shifted slightly with each heartbeat. Most of the time, the plates overlapped perfectly, creating an impenetrable barrier. But for just a moment during each heartbeat, tiny gaps appeared between the plates. "The old leg injury," Hayes said suddenly. "It's affecting the heartbeat." "Look at the timing." Rodriguez observed the pattern. The creature's damaged leg was causing it to shift weight constantly, which put stress on its entire body. This stress was creating an irregular heartbeat, and the irregular heartbeat was causing the chest armor to shift out of sync. "Chun," Rodriguez called on his radio. "Are you monitoring the creature's bio readings?" "Yes, Sarge. Why? What's the heartbeat pattern?" Chun checked his instruments. "Irregular. Looks like it beats normal for about 2 minutes, then there's a longer pause, then it goes back to normal." Johnson nodded. "Classic compensation pattern. The damaged leg is causing circulation problems. Every 2 minutes, the heart has to work harder to pump blood to the injured area." Rodriguez studied the chest armor through his field glasses. During the normal heartbeat, the armor plates stayed tightly closed. But during the longer pause, when the heart was working harder, the plates shifted more dramatically. "How big is the gap when the armor shifts?" he asked Hayes. Hayes looked through her own glasses. "Maybe 6 inches, 8 at most. And it only lasts for about a second." Sullivan's voice came over the radio from her sniper position. "I can see the gap from here. It's not big, but it goes deep. Probably reaches all the way to the power source." Rodriguez realized they had found the Crusher's critical weak point. The creature's own old injury had created a vulnerability that could be exploited. But the gap was too small for one of Hayes' demolition charges, and it only appeared for 1 second every 2 minutes. "We need a different approach," Rodriguez said. "Hayes, do you have any of your shape charges left?" "I have 2 armor piercing charges. They're designed to punch through thick metal, not explode outward." "Perfect. Can you modify one to detonate after it penetrates?" Hayes thought for a moment. "Maybe I could rig a delay fuse, but the timing would have to be perfect. The charge would need to punch through the gap, penetrate deep into the creature, and then explode." Rodriguez looked around the destroyed base. "We need a delivery system. Something that can fire the charge with precision at exactly the right moment." Johnson pointed toward the base's maintenance area. the vehicle lift system. It uses magnetic launchers to move heavy equipment if we can modify one. Rodriguez saw the possibility immediately. The maintenance tunnels ran directly under the base, and there was an access point that would put them directly beneath the crusher. A magnetic launcher could fire Hayes's modified charge straight up through the armor gap. Chun, can you access the base's maintenance systems? Most of them are destroyed, but the underground systems might still work. Give me a few minutes. While Chin worked on the technical systems, Hayes began modifying her armor-piercing charge. She removed the standard contact fuse and replaced it with a timer that would allow the charge to penetrate before exploding. This is going to be tricky, she said. Too short a delay and it explodes on the armor. Too long and it goes through without hitting anything vital. Johnson was studying the creature's heartbeat pattern. I can time it, he said. Medical training. I'm good with biological rhythms. Rodriguez made his decision. Hayes and I go into the tunnels with the modified charge. Johnson times the heartbeat and calls the shot. Sullivan provides overwatch. Chun keeps the systems running. But as they prepared to move, the crusher's main weapons reached full charge. Energy discharges were now arcing constantly between the weapon ports, and the creature was beginning to raise its arms toward the sky. It's targeting the orbital fleet, Chun reported. Weapon lock in progress. Rodriguez looked at his watch. They had minutes, maybe less, before the crusher would fire. Once those weapons discharged, hundreds of human lives would be lost. The team moved quickly toward the maintenance area. The tunnel entrance was partially blocked by debris, but they managed to clear enough space to get through. Rodriguez and Hayes descended into the underground tunnels while the others took their positions above. The tunnels were dark and filled with the sound of the crusher's footsteps echoing from above. Each step shook dust from the ceiling and made the metal walkways groan under stress. Rodriguez and Hayes had to time their movement carefully to avoid being crushed if the creature stepped directly overhead. They reached the central maintenance chamber, which was located directly beneath where the crusher was standing. Through a transparent aluminum observation port in the ceiling, Rodriguez could see the creature's underbelly. The pulsing red glow of its heart was clearly visible. Hayes set up the magnetic launcher while Rodriguez prepared the modified charge. The launcher was designed to move heavy equipment, but Hayes had recalibrated it to fire a single projectile with maximum velocity. Johnson, what's the heartbeat status? Rodriguez called on his radio. Normal rhythm right now, Johnson replied. Next irregular cycle in about 90 seconds. Rodriguez loaded the modified charge into the launcher and aimed it at the observation port. The shot had to be perfect. The charge needed to punch through the port, travel upward through the creature's body, hit the armor gap at exactly the right moment, and penetrate to the power source before exploding. 60 seconds to a regular cycle, Johnson reported, above. Then the crusher's weapons were preparing to fire. Rodriguez could hear the high-pitched whining getting louder. Energy was building to critical levels. 30 seconds? Rodriguez's hands were steady on the launcher controls, but his heart was racing. Everything depended on the next few moments. If they missed this shot, there would not be another chance. 15 seconds? Get ready. Hayes stepped back from the launcher. Rodriguez aimed through the observation port at the pulsing red glow above. 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7. The crusher's heartbeat was becoming irregular. The armor plates on its chest were beginning to shift. 5, 4, 3. Rodriguez could see the gap opening between the armor plates. 2, 1, fire. Rodriguez fired the launcher. The modified charge shot upward through the observation port, traveled through the creature's body, and disappeared into the gap between the armor plates just as they reached maximum separation. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the crusher's entire body convulsed as the charge exploded deep inside its chest cavity. The creature's scream was like nothing Rodriguez had ever heard, part mechanical alarm, part living agony. Power fluctuations cascaded through the crusher's systems. Its weapon ports went dark as energy was redirected to damage control. The creature staggered, its massive weight working against it as internal systems began to fail. Rodriguez and Hayes ran for the tunnel exit as the maintenance chamber began to collapse. Above them, the crusher was falling. The crusher's scream echoed across the entire valley as the creature began to fall. Rodriguez and Hayes scrambled through the collapsing maintenance tunnels, debris raining down around them as the massive biomechanical hybrid lost its balance. Above, Rodriguez could feel the ground shaking with increasing violence as the crusher's internal systems failed one by one. The creature that had been built to destroy entire regiments was now fighting a losing battle against its own massive weight and failing power systems. "Move! Move! Move!" Rodriguez shouted as a section of tunnel ceiling collapsed behind them. Hayes was ahead of him, running through the darkness with only emergency lighting to guide their way. The tunnel exit was still 50 yards away, but the entire underground system was coming apart as the crusher's death throes continued above. They reached the exit. Just as the creature's left leg gave out completely, the crusher tilted sideways, its arms windmilling as it tried to regain balance. But there was no recovering from the internal damage Rodriguez's shot had caused. Critical systems were shutting down throughout the creature's body. Rodriguez and Hayes emerged from the tunnels to find Johnson, Sullivan, and Chun waiting for them at a safe distance. The team watched in amazement as the 200-foot-tall monster that had terrified entire star systems began its final collapse. The crusher's fall was not quick. The creature fought against gravity for nearly a full minute, its remaining systems trying desperately to keep it upright. But the damage to its power source had created a cascade failure that could not be stopped. When the crusher finally hit the ground, the impact registered as a minor earthquake. The creature's massive body created a crater in the valley floor, and the sound of its impact echoed off the crystal formations for several seconds. Dust and debris filled the air, making it hard to see. Rodriguez's team waited behind their cover until the dust began to settle. When visibility returned, they could see the crusher lying motionless in the crater it had created. "Is it dead?" Sullivan asked, her rifle still trained on the fallen giant. Rodriguez studied the creature through his field glasses. There was no movement, no energy signatures, no signs of life. The biomechanical hybrid that had destroyed 3 human bases on other worlds was finally still. "Chun, are you picking up any power readings?" Rodriguez asked. Chun checked his instruments and shook his head. "Nothing. All systems appear to be offline." Rodriguez's radio crackled with an incoming transmission. It was Admiral Stone from the orbital fleet. "Ground team, this is Admiral Stone. We registered seismic activity on the surface. What's your status?" Rodriguez keyed his radio with a smile. "Admiral, this is Staff Sergeant Rodriguez. The crusher is down." "Repeat, the crusher is down." There was a long pause before Stone's voice came back, filled with disbelief. "Rodriguez, did you just tell me that your 5-person team took down a crusher?" "Yes, ma'am." "The target is neutralized." Another pause. "How the hell did you manage that? That thing survived orbital bombardment on 3 other worlds." Rodriguez looked at his team and then at the fallen creature in the crater. "Ma'am, everything that's built can be unbuilt. You just have to know where to push." The rescue ships began arriving within an hour. Medical teams checked Rodriguez and his soldiers for injuries while engineering teams swarmed over the crusher's remains. The fallen creature was a treasure trove of intelligence about Vorthak biomechanical technology. Colonel Morrison was among the first to arrive on the surface. He found Rodriguez sitting on a crystal outcropping, writing his after-action report. "Danny," Morrison said, "I need to understand what happened here. Our intelligence said these things were indestructible." Rodriguez looked up from his report. "They're not indestructible, sir. They're just very well built. But this one had been damaged before, and the Vorthak repair job wasn't perfect. The old injury created a vulnerability we could exploit." "You're telling me you brought down a 200-foot war machine because it had a bad leg?" "The bad leg caused circulation problems, which caused an irregular heartbeat, which caused the chest armor to shift out of sync. That created a gap we could shoot through." Rodriguez gestured toward the crater. Sometimes the biggest problems have the smallest solutions. Morrison shook his head in amazement. This is going to change everything. If we can figure out how to replicate what you did here. Already working on it, sir, Rodriguez replied. Hayes and I are putting together training protocols for other teams. We're calling them giant killer units. Over the following weeks, Rodriguez's victory became legendary. Throughout the Terran Defense Force, the tactics he had developed were studied and adapted for use against other large-scale Vorthak weapons. Specialized giant killer teams were formed and trained to take down enemy war machines. Using precision strikes and technical knowledge rather than brute force, the Crushers remains provided valuable intelligence that help human engineers understand Vorthak biomechanical technology for the first time. The creature's hybrid design had seemed impossible to defeat, but Rodriguez had proven that every weapon, no matter how advanced, had weaknesses that could be exploited. Rodriguez himself was offered promotions and positions in military intelligence, but he chose to stay in the field. He spent the next months training new giant killer teams, teaching other soldiers how to find the weak points in seemingly invincible enemies. Size isn't everything became his standard lesson for new recruits. The bigger they build them, the harder they fall. You just need to know where to aim. 6 months after the battle on Kepler 442b, Rodriguez received new orders. Intelligence had located another Vorthak superweapon on a contested world. This one was even larger than the Crusher, a walking fortress called a Devastator that could level entire cities. Rodriguez gathered his team and prepared for deployment. Hayes had developed new explosive charges specifically designed for large-scale targets. Johnson had studied the medical data from dozens of biomechanical hybrids. Sullivan had practiced precision shooting at extreme ranges. Kuhn had upgraded his electronic warfare capabilities. As their transport ship approached the new battlefield, Rodriguez looked out at the planet below and smiled. Somewhere down there was another impossible problem waiting to be solved. Another enemy weapon that everyone said could not be defeated had built his reputation on proving that impossible was just another word for challenging. The Vorthak Empire kept building bigger and more dangerous weapons, but Rodriguez and his team kept finding ways to bring them down. The war against the Vorthak was far from over, but humanity now had something it had not had before, proof that no enemy weapon was truly unstoppable. Every machine had weak points. Every design had flaws. Every giant could be brought down by someone who was smart enough, determined enough, and stubborn enough to find the right place to push. Rodriguez checked his equipment one final time as the transport ship entered the planet's atmosphere. Below them waited another monster that needed to be taught the same lesson Rodriguez had taught the Crusher. Sometimes the best way to fight giants was not to become a giant yourself. Sometimes the best way was to stay small, stay smart, and remember that even the mightiest fortress could be brought down by finding the right crack in its foundation. The transport ship landed, and Rodriguez led his team out into another hostile world. Behind them, they left a trail of destroyed enemy superweapons and a growing legend throughout the human fleet. The war beast had been built to crush regiments. But Staff Sergeant Danny Rodriguez had crushed it first, and he was just getting started. The USS Liberty moved through space like a metal fish swimming in an ocean of stars. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge and watched the massive alien station grow larger on the main screen. The thing was huge. It looked like someone had taken a city and hung it in space with lights that sparkled like diamonds. "How big is that thing?" asked Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez from her position at the weapons console. "Big enough to hold 10 million people," Morrison replied. His voice was steady, but everyone could hear the worry in it. "Maybe more." Ambassador Ryan Phillips walked onto the bridge carrying a coffee cup and a folder full of papers. He was a big man with gray hair and hands that looked like they had seen plenty of fights. His suit was wrinkled and his tie was loose. He did not look like the kind of person who would save the human race. "Morning, everyone," Phillips said. He took a sip of his coffee and made a face. "This coffee tastes like motor oil." "Sir, we have an incoming message from Admiral Carter on Earth. said Communications Officer Ben Clark. Phillips nodded. Put her through. The main screen changed to show Admiral Lisa Carter sitting behind her desk on Earth. She looked tired and worried. Behind her, Phillips could see other officers moving around with the quick steps of people who had too much work and not enough time. Ryan, I hope you understand how important this is, Carter said. The Zephyrians sent their message 3 days ago. Submit to their empire or they will wipe out every human in the galaxy. Phillips sat down in the captain's chair and put his feet up on the console in front of him. Morrison looked at him with surprise, but said nothing. I read their message. Phillips said, pretty rude if you ask me. No please or thank you, just bow down or die. This is not a joke, Ryan. These aliens have destroyed 47 different worlds. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. They have ships that can crack planets in half. Phillips nodded and took another sip of his terrible coffee. No, I read the files, but you know what I noticed? Every species that went to meet with them came back as slaves. Every single one. Because they are smart enough to know when they are beaten, Carter said. Or because they went in already scared, Phillips replied. Fear makes people stupid. It makes them give up before they even try to fight. Carter leaned forward in her chair. What are you planning to do? Phillips smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the kind of smile that said he was thinking about something that would probably get him in trouble. I'm going to talk to their emperor. Just talk. See what kind of person he is? He is not a person, Ryan. He is an alien who has killed billions of people. Everyone is a person on the inside, Phillips said. Even the bad ones. And bullies are all the same, no matter what planet they come from. The transmission ended and the screen went back to showing the alien station. It was close enough now that they could see ships moving around it like tiny insects. Some of the ships were bigger than anything humans had ever built. Sir, we are getting a transmission from the station, Clark said. Put it through. A new voice came through the speakers. It sounded like gravel being mixed in a cement truck. The words were in English, but the accent was strange and harsh. Human vessel, you will dock at Maintenance Bay 7. You will submit to full security inspection. You will follow all protocols or face immediate destruction. Phillips pressed the communication button. This is Ambassador Phillips. Thanks for the welcome. We will be right over. You did not acknowledge the protocols, human. Sorry about that. I was distracted by how pretty your station looks. Really nice work with all those lights. There was a long pause, then the voice came back, sounding confused. You will dock at Maintenance Bay 7. Copy that. See you soon. The communication ended. Morrison looked at Phillips with concern. Sir, Maintenance Bay 7 is not the diplomatic docking area. It is where they repair garbage haulers. Phillips stood up and stretched. I know. They want to make us feel small before we even meet their boss. Make us walk through the servant areas instead of the fancy parts. Are you going to complain? Nope. I'm going to smile and say thank you. Nothing makes a bully more confused than someone who refuses to be bullied. The Liberty moved toward the station. As they got closer, Phillips could see that the maintenance bay was dirty and full of broken ships. Alien workers moved around in heavy suits, fixing hull damage and replacing parts. The smell of fuel and metal came through the air filters. A group of alien soldiers was waiting for them when they docked. They looked like walking lizards with too many teeth. Their leader stepped forward and pointed a scanner at Phillips. You will submit to security inspection, the leader said. Phillips spread his arms wide. Go ahead. Just try not to tickle me. I am very ticklish. The scan took 20 minutes. They checked every inch of his body and went through all of his bags. They found his folding chair and looked at it like it might explode. What is this device? The leader asked. It is a chair. You sit on it when you get tired of standing up. Why do you carry a chair? Phillips shrugged. Sometimes the furniture in other places is not very comfortable. I like to be prepared. They also found his protein bars, his tablet computer, and a small picture of his daughter, Katie. The aliens looked at everything like they were studying weapons of war. Finally, they were done. The leader pointed down a long corridor that looked like it had not been cleaned in years. You will follow this path to your quarters. You will not deviate. You will not speak to other species. You will wait for further instructions. Phillips picked up his bags and started walking. The corridor was exactly what he had expected. Long, gray, and designed to make visitors feel like prisoners. Other aliens hurried past with their heads down, not making eye contact. His quarters were small and basic. A bed, a desk, a chair, and a small bathroom. The walls were bare metal and the floor was cold concrete. It looked like a jail cell. Phillips set his bags down and looked around. It took him about 30 seconds to find the first camera. It was hidden in the light fixture above the desk. He found 4 more cameras and 3 listening devices. He walked over to the biggest camera and waved at it. "Hello there. I am Ryan Phillips from Earth. Thanks for the room. It is very cozy." He kicked off his boots and sat down at the desk. Then he put his feet up on the surface and leaned back in the chair. "I hope you do not mind if I get comfortable. It has been a long trip and my feet are killing me." Somewhere in the station, he knew that alien security officers were watching him and trying to figure out what kind of human would act so casual in enemy territory. Philip smiled at the camera again. "This is going to be fun.